Hi, what we're going to look at today is women in new monasticism, because women are often scarce. You don't hear as much about them. Most of the books are written by men. And what I want to do is, first of all, before I really start saying anything, is show the books that I used so that I give credit right at the outset to these people. The Forgotten Desert Mothers by Laura Swan. The Desert Mothers by Mary C. Earle. And Harlots of the Desert by Benedicta Ward. Most of what I'm saying today is based on their research and their writings, so I want to give them credit. So I want to start by saying that studies in feminist theology have uncovered from biblical texts women who have been lost or marginalised. One of the books that I would recommend is Anne Thurston's Knowing Her Place as a place to start looking at feminist theology and biblical text of women. What Anne does is look at 13 Bible stories, and she does what she calls reads them against the grain, which means she doesn't go with the necessarily traditional, always the way it was understood interpretation, but she looks at the stories and looks specifically at the women and how they fit in the story, and in a sense she lifts the women to prominence and gives us a new reading of them. Her interpretations are clearly influenced by the work of the great feminist theologians Fiorenza and Tribble. I think largely that women have been subverted as possibly bad and inferior since the interpretation of Eve in the creation myths, which portray women as those who make poor choices, those who tempt men, and those who are somewhat sneaky. Sort of given women that bad rap right from early times. But actually women have been very significant throughout the ages. What I'd like to do in time, and I even considered it for today, but didn't do it because I want it to be bigger than for today, is actually to draw up some kind of timeline to share, where we look at women right from biblical earliest Christian times, starting with like the Marys and the people we know, coming right through to present day and looking at all the different periods of time and how women have always been there. There's been like this thread of women running through the history of Christianity, and people are starting to uncover it. However, today I'm just going to talk mainly about the Desert Mothers, that small time period. Mary Earle in this book, The Desert Mothers, talks about her training to become an Episcopal priest, and when she started training. I'm going to quote her here. She says, "We had learned of church fathers, desert fathers, and male apostles, bishops and martyrs, and that was all well and good as far as it went. Common sense told me that there had to be many untold stories of women who had lived this Christian faith. I had an intuitive conviction that women had played a far larger role than the scholarship of the time was revealing. I would walk round, asking out loud, where are my mothers? Where are my sisters? Where are all those women without whom there would be no faith, no church, no tradition?" And that really expressed my heart. Where are the women? So what I want to do today is just invite you to meet a few of the Desert Mothers. These are women, often many of them came from fairly rich, influential backgrounds, who chose to leave their homes and their families to live as hermits or solitaries, or establish or live in monastic communities. They were in the deserts and the wilderness of what is present-day Egypt, Syria, Israel, and Turkey. So briefly, why did these women go to the desert? A very simplistic study of history shows that in the early church, women were offering their lives as martyrs as much as the men. They too refused to bow to the image of the emperor. They were tortured and killed. They refused to recant their faith even in the face of certain death. The stories around such as Blandina, who was martyred in 177. Apparently she was roasted on a grill, then thrown to wild bulls in Lyon in France. There's also Perpetua and Felicity, who were slain with a sword in Carthage. Perpetua was a 22-year-old mother who was still nursing her son at the time of her death, and Felicity was her slave who was pregnant. Many, many more can be found. Faithful women who lived only to serve Christ. However, with Constantine and Christianity becoming the state religion, which Andy touched briefly on as well, the age of the martyrs kind of passed, and many Christians became concerned with this alliance with the state. They desired to live out faith in a different way. After this, men and women went to the deserts in large numbers to live out the simple and faithful life, choosing poverty and simplicity. However, I do want to note that there was some movement towards the desert before the Edict of Milan in 313. For example, the stories of three sisters, Nymphodoria, Mendoria, and Metrodora. They lived as recluses in caves of hardened lava in Bithynia. They were mentors and spiritual directors to many, and they were all martyred in 304. The women apparently outnumbered the men 2 to 1, according to Palladius in his Lysianid history. Yet it's the men we read about, the men's names we remember, and the men's wisdom and sayings which are known. So where are the women? Just want to read you or talk about briefly some of these women. Some of their sayings. Excuse me while I find them. We have one here, Maria the harp player. She was a liturgical musician who served as a harp player and cantor in a church in Jerusalem. She sensed a call to life of deeper prayer and solitude, and she moved into the desert near the Dead Sea. She filled her clay vessel at the pool of Salome, took a basket of soaked legumes, and moved with her heart into a cave, which served as her hermitage for 18 years. Travellers came by, and they heard her playing the harp, but often didn't know where the sound came from. She never left the cave. She never spoke to anyone in the 18 years, but the story runs that her pitcher of water and her basket of legumes never ran out.